Greetings, brothers and sisters. Welcome to Kaba Media Television. I'm your host today, Kaim Wasset, and I'm glad to be here because I'm sitting next to one of the greatest men that have ever lived, a powerful scholar, Dr. Kaba. I want to welcome you to Pittsburgh. Thank you for coming, brother.
Brother, thank you for inviting me. I appreciate it.
It's a pleasure.
It's my pleasure.
Thanks to Brother Kaka. We have the brother here today. I'm going to ask him some questions. We're also going to get into why he's here today. We're going to get into about his life and about some of the things that he's been through and had to endure the many years he's been out here. So Dr. Kaba, briefly, as we start, tell the people about who you are, what your name is, and where you grew up.
Well, I'm from New York, born and raised in New York, born in Manhattan, just south of Harlem, and just north of Hell's Kitchen. And I developed my, from very young age, I just started doing what I had to do, growing up and listening to my elders and studying and doing all the things. And I think that the turning point in my life came with Professor John Henry Clark. But I really want to emphasize the fact that I had great parents, mother and father. Yeah, okay. Very strong. I grew up in a project, Amsterdam projects, that was between 61st and 64th Street, on Amsterdam Avenue. Now, of course, those that may not be familiar with New York may not understand the significance of that, but that's why I say I was just south of Harlem and just north of Hell's Kitchen. And because Hell's Kitchen was just 2 blocks down, it started 2 blocks down from where I live. And I want to stress the importance of my parents, my mother and my father, because in discussions with what makes strong families and strong nations, a nation is only as strong as its weakest family, you see. And I know that both my mother and father instilled in me the principles that I sit with still to this day talking to you. I also know that the biological mother and the biological father does not have to be the person that raises a child. But you do need a balance. You need a male and you need a female balance.
You have brothers and sisters?
I have a sister older than myself, 5 years older than myself. And so it was my sister and myself growing up. And we had a family. No matter what anybody says about the project, that was my neighborhood. Right. That was the place that I grew up.
You don't know anything.
Yeah, and I enjoyed it. I was born just before drugs began coming into the world. I was born in 1953. I was born 2 years before Emmett Till. I was approaching the 2-year mark when Emmett Till incident occurred, which really was one of the cornerstones to the development of the civil rights movement. You see, so I remember those stories, and I remember those experiences.
What was it like in Harlem as a young buck?
It was beautiful, man. I enjoyed Harlem. Every neighborhood, as far as I'm concerned, has its problems. It has its challenges. I was never fearful of Harlem. In fact, I tell the story of my meeting Malcolm. As a young 7-year-old boy, my mother was getting her hair done. And that was between 120th and 121st Street. And so I frequented Harlem. I used to get my first record that I ever bought was Papa's Got a Brand New Band, 1965. It was at Kenny's Record Shop. See, these are my memories, and I bought it from Harlem. These are my memories. This is what my life is built on. And the significance of what it is that we're doing. We can call it struggle, or we can call it challenge. I just call it life.
What was it like growing up in your home? Your dad and your mom, were they conscious, as we say today, or Christians, or what was it like in the home?
Well, to tell you the truth, as you know, my name prior to my correction, Kaba for Kamene, I was Booker T. Coleman, Booker Taliaferro Coleman, Jr. My parents were married in 1945 in Mother A.M.E. Zion Church in Harlem. The pastor was Benjamin Robeson, Paul Robeson's brother. Paul Robeson would visit the church periodically. We had Paul Robeson's, see, we didn't have an album holder stand, so we used to line it up against the phonograph. and Paul Robeson's album was always on the front. So I remember sitting in my house on my couch, and when I would look at the music, it would always be Paul Robeson's album on the front.
For those that don't know who Paul Robeson is, for the young bucks today, just imagine Usher, Adrian Peterson, LeBron James, and Denzel all in one. That's Paul Robeson.
Yeah.
For the young brothers.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
He was a multi-genius.
Yes, sir.
Everything he touched. And this brother was well melanated. And he was from New Jersey. And he came from a family of geniuses. So my evolution through my life was to be exposed to the African American community. I was born in it. My name was immersed in it.
To make the essence of who you are.
Exactly. From my very opening days of consciousness, I was familiar. However, I always make this distinction because of the nature of what we experience. Because I grew up Roman Catholic. My father was Baptist, Methodist, I should say, AME Zion. But I followed my mother's. Went to Catholic school, elementary school, and went to church every Sunday. Was a choir boy, altar boy. But after I would leave church, I would go home, and my mother would play Billie Holiday. My mother loved Billie Holiday. And by the way, if we want to make comparisons, Billie Holiday was your Beyonce.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And a couple more of them combined.
Yes, sir.
Too.
Yes, sir.
Yeah,
And a couple. Alicia Keys, had them all in there.
And you could touch a little Rihanna there too.
Yes, sir.
And you could also touch little Kim, because Billie Holiday,
The
Lady Day
sassiness.
had that touch. You see that sister had that other edge, you know, to her.
Special lady.
Very special, with all the pros and the cons
As
of
we all
being
have.
African
Yes, sir.
in America, being in the throes of white supremacy, European hegemony, being one of the finest singers to ever live, yet being treated as if she was second class. When she saw all the other European American singers passing her, making more money, same thing happening today,
Right.
but doesn't even have a mediocre comparison of talent.
Right.
You see, that's what Billie Holiday
Yes, sir.
is. You see,
Sure.
so growing up Catholic, what the point I want to make is, after I would listen to Billie Holiday, my mother would always play a song. Mama may have and Papa may have, but God bless the child with better song.
Yes, sir.
Okay? My mother would play another song, and she'd always keep this in mind as it related to depending on people. The song that says, sometimes I feel like a motherless child.
Yes.
You see, and that's as African people, that's who we were. Being someone without a mother, growing up without a mother, that very nurturing, yet still being able to handle it.
Attached to that.
Exactly.
Yes, sir.
But after that, I then would go to my friend's house, Jose, who was Puerto Rican, and they practiced Santeria.
Explain to the people what you do.
Santeria. Santeria is the movement of the spiritual system of Yoruba, West Nigeria, into the Caribbean. And because African peoples who were enslaved of African descent wanted to maintain their spiritual integrity, they superimposed the Catholic Church over the Orishas and the Yoruba faith system. So in practicing Santeria, they may have been saying Santa Barbara, but they were really talking about possibly Oshun or Jemaja, okay, Obatala, okay, Chango, you see, Ogun, okay. And so they practice this, and I saw Las Sietas Potencias, the seven powers.
Ogun is the name they gave God.
Yes,
Yes, sir.
the whole conceptual framework, the force. All of these really come from Kamene. They're all but they're Nigerian. There's a brother by the name of R. Lucas Olamide who wrote a book entitled The Gods of Nigeria, where he compares the Nigerian spiritual system to the nature system of ancient Kamene. But the real point that I want to make is that after having been in the Catholic Church and looking at all these European deities, and then going to my friend's house Jose and seeing all these black gods and saints.
Yes.
And there was just, from the African American tradition of my parents, moving into Santeria, the drumming, the foods, the festivities,
Spirituality.
the spirituality, yes, and the camaraderie, you see, and experiencing this. I mean, they used to say, mira, escape, because I was all into the music, you know, I mean, I was just, exactly.
Yeah.
It was in me. Even when I was eating the chicken, the pollo, I was into it. And they watched us, they said, wow, look at him. You know, I'm 8, 9, 10, 11 years old, but I'm all up in it. So I give credit to my African American community and my family for my African American roots. But I give my honor to my Puerto Rican Borinqueño for my introduction to Africa. And so when you combine those two, by the time I was 12 and a half, sitting in front of Professor John Henry Clark, when I first met him, I was ready to make that move.
What a great opportunity you had.
You see, because I was grounded. I was grounded first in myself as an African American, and then I was grounded in Africa. And then I met Professor Clark, who put it all together.
Yes, put it all together, shot you to
He made it clear,
Right.
very clear.
Explain to me your educational background. Where did you go to school? What degrees you have?
Yeah.
What field of study?
My area was, well, I went to Catholic elementary school from kindergarten, 8th grade, St. Paul the Apostle. I then went to Powell Memorial, the land of, who today we call Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, but we call him Lumal Sinda. And I remember the street that Kareem Abdul-Jabbar had to get off at a particular train station, and he had to walk up the block. But the block that he had to walk up to turn the corner to go to high school was the block that my elementary school was on. Now, you have to go back. He graduated from Powell Memorial as a senior when I was in the 6th grade. The year that Malcolm X was assassinated was the year that Kareem Abdul-Jabbar graduated from high school. But if you go 4 years back when he was a freshman, you're dealing with 6, 5, 4, 3. You're dealing with a 3rd grade. And you got all these young brothers, and you'd also have to know the geography and topography of 60th Street, because it was on 9th Avenue, and that began at the bottom of like a hill, and it went up, the street went up, and then it went down on 10th Avenue. If we young brothers, all the young brothers, you know, hanging out, going to school, we'd be on 60th Street on one side, on 10th Avenue. We could see Kareem Abdul-Jabbar's head on 9th Avenue. That's how tall he was.
What was he, about 6'7" in 9th grade?
No, he was getting close. When I knew him, he was getting close to 7 feet. He would eventually, I believe his height was 7'2".
Right.
But in high school, he was 7. I believe, I'm pretty sure, I could be, but I mean, he was up there. But see, you have to understand, these young brothers from the Amsterdam projects, we never saw nobody that tall before.
Right.
You see? And I'll tell you another story about the brother. Because when we would come up on him, you're dealing with 4 years, so he got to know us after 4 years. Because we were out there every day. We used to dance around this brother and just look up at him.
Like a giant.
And he used to palm our heads like a basketball. And he walked with us. He was very kind.
Very humble brother.
Very humble, very kind. You see, he had no misconceptions about his height. He knew as young brothers we had never seen anyone like that. So he didn't take offense to it. He was young. You know, he was high school, freshman. You know, he wasn't that old. 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. But he had a stability in his emotions to know that these brothers, these young brothers, didn't mean no harm. You know, they just found you to be fantastic brothers. We never saw nobody that tall before. And so that's my elementary school. And then I would go to the high school that he went to. I would get interested in sports. You know, we grew up running.
Did you play sports in high school?
Well, I ran track. I ran track. But the fortunate thing about our high school is that you had to perform certain tasks in physical ed. So it wasn't just about throwing basketball. It wasn't just about exercising. We went to round robin where we had to learn how to wrestle. We had to learn how to box. But I was intrigued and entranced by the rings in gymnastics. I was just intrigued with what the human body could do on its own. The horse, the parallel bars, but the rings. And I would eventually focus in, and I was eventually in college, I'd be recruited for gymnastics. And what's interesting, and it goes back to culture. After I finished my career, got out of college, NYU.
NYU?
Well, I started my college at Manhattan Community College after Power Memorial. But I wasn't too impressed with the community college. So I went to the United States Air Force Academy. I wanted to be an astronaut. But it's a funny thing what people do with brothers. And I got disenchanted. And so I transferred to West Point under Dr. Clark's suggestion.
What was that experience like, West Point?
That was phenomenal because Dr. Clark said, look, man, you got a big mouth. I was a young cub in the Black Panther Party. Young cub. You're not going to see my picture holding rifles. You're not going to see me out in the street. You'll see me in that room learning Kiswahili. You'll see me in that room learning culture. Because that's one of the misconceptions of the Black Panther Party. The exoticness of guns and fighting and all that.
They highlight that one aspect of it.
Yes.
So much more.
Medical center, dental center, legal, the
Food program, yes,
Yeah.
which is huge.
Exactly. Because we all have to remember back in those days, we did not have the types of programs that we have today. So that feeding program sometimes was where the great majority of young people could have gotten a meal. I didn't have to go there. My parents took care. My father was a postal worker. My mother was a secretary.
Hard working people.
Very hard. And the one thing they taught my sister and I was work ethic. And this is what I try to really instill in young people. To have a work ethic. Whatever you do, work hard.
How many children do you have?
I have 4.
4 children?
3 girls, 1 boy.
Okay, yeah, I met Brother Haru.
Yeah.
Strong brother.
Yeah.
MC.
Yes,
Yes,
no
sir.
doubt,
Yes,
no
sir.
doubt. 3 grandchildren, 1 great grandchild. So that's the family.
Your roots, are they from down south?
My dad is from Alabama, Tuskegee,
Oh, okay.
Booker T.
There you go.
Okay.
That was my next question.
Yeah.
Was you named
My
after
mother-
the great
yes.
Booker T?
Yeah, well,
Okay.
my grandmother, my father's mother and Booker T. Washington were friends.
Wow.
How close they were, I don't know, but there was a
Okay.
friendship.
Okay.
And she named my father after the friendship.
Wow. People don't know the power Booker T had when he was alive and the great things that he did, you know?
Yeah.
My generation, we kind of give him, this Uncle Tom title where, we brush off the things that he accomplished, but he did what he had to do to build that school.
Yes.
And it amazes me that how people walked to the school
Yes.
and they built their own
Absolutely.
buildings and different things. So that shows the
Absolutely.
determination we have as a people.
Absolutely, and Dr. Clark often told me, and told us, that Booker T. Washington was one of the most misunderstood men in history.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Because you see, we all come with certain perspectives about what it happened. If I told a story of what I had to do to get where I am, we all have our moments that you have to do what the time demands that you do. If you want to move ahead.
Yes, sir.
You want to be a hard head?
Yes, sir.
You want to be a roughneck?
Yes, sir.
You go ahead. But that step that you just took, that's going to be your last.
Theory of adaptability.
That's the bottom line.
Must adapt.
You see, it's not that only the strong survive. And it is not necessarily that it's the survival of the fittest. We have learned through observation and science, the ones that continue are the ones that can adapt to new times.
Yes, sir. Tell me about who you studied under. You're one of the people I've studied for a very long time, as well as many of the other greats, John Henry, Dr. Ben. Tell me something about who you studied under, who influenced you as a man to get into the life you're into now.
Well, first and foremost, again, I always go back to my parents.
Right.
I always shout their praises.
Right.
My mother, Janet, and my father, Booker T. Okay? Strong people.
Right.
My father went to Tuskegee, and he took up tailoring. My father used to make clothes for me that would make Gianni Versace cry.
Wow.
People, when I used to walk out in my clothing, people would wonder, where did you get that?
Now I see where you get the style from, brother.
That's my daddy.
Yes, sir.
This is all I ever saw in him,
Right.
was his style.
We call it swag today.
That's a swag. That's it. That's it. My daddy used to always say, look, let me tell you something. No matter what you carry, image is the most important thing.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Because people see your image before they ever hear you. They see your image before you do anything. They see your image, how you walk, how you carry yourself. And so, you know, I went through a whole process. You know, my daddy was close to 6 feet. Somewhere between 190, 210 pounds, all the years I knew him. I don't know what my father's voice sounds like above conversation. My father never raised his voice to me or to my mother or to my sister in my life. I don't know what his voice sounds like screaming or raised. I don't know what it sounds like. My father could have squashed us physically. My father was a huge Bama brother, but never touched me. But he would just give me that look.
You knew this. Cut it out.
Disappointment. And it wasn't a threatening look like I'm coming over here ready to pop you. It was just you,
Know
the
better.
spirit.
Yes.
You know better.
You felt them.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that's what I try to carry, that image. And to be able to take it to that level. So that my parents, of course. My father is what I call the ultimate gentleman. To understand the difference between being weak and being meek. So when the Bible says, which I quote because it's a wonderful metaphoric book, when it says the meek shall inherit the earth, it don't say the weak shall inherit the earth. It's the meek. It's the people who could squash you, but choose not to.
Not to. Right.
Because they know their power.
I talk to the young brothers all the time. I tell them fighting isn't the answer. You know, if you can win a battle with someone by not even picking up your fist, that's the true testament of a man.
Absolutely.
We can talk it out.
Absolutely.
You know, politic, whatever we need to do to solve our problem instead of picking up the gun and killing and shooting each other. You know, the way we do today. Talk about some of the scholars you studied under.
Of course, Professor John.
What was he like?
Professor.
As a person.
Oh, yeah.
Because we've all studied his tapes and watched them.
12 and a half, he was 51. I did not get close to him until my 20s. But I interacted with him occasionally through 12 and a half to 20. Give you an example. I grew up Catholic, wanted to become a priest. I was in high school seminary. And I had a relationship with the church to keep the connection there. And one day I was down in the bottom, like in the catacombs of the church, the basement of the church, and I was doing things. Came upon a book. And I was reading about the origins of the Paulist priests, which is the sect that I wanted to go into. And they spoke about protecting the statue, the icon, Our Lady of Czestochowa, from the Nazis in World War II.
Yes.
And in parentheses, next to Our Lady of Czestochowa, it said the Black Madonna in China. I had never heard that term before. Now, mind you, I'm into Africa, I'm into African American history, but my mind is still focused on becoming a priest. See, this is how the times that we live in impact us. We might be thinking a whole nother concept. However, the hold of certain European concepts still hold sway over our movement. As you look out today, you see this.
Everywhere.
Everywhere. Because that's what we're immersed in. So I called Professor Clark. And at that time, we were Rotary friends.
Right.
I called Professor Clark. I say, Professor Clark, I came upon a book, and it talked about the Black Madonna in China. Now, you'd have to know Professor Clark personally because Professor Clark had a smirk when he was about to drop something on you. If you look at his tapes, you see he has a side smile, a smirk, when he's ready to drop something on you.
Right? You know it's coming.
Yes. I could even hear that smirk over the phone. That's how it was. And he said, you know, when you get a chance, give me a call, come up to my house, we'll talk. Now mind you, I'm 14, somewhere around there. So I come up, he gives me a copy, a Xerox copy of a story he wrote called The Boy Who Painted Christ Black. I have that copy. And he said, I want you to read this. I'm not going to tell you too much. Read this and then come back. We'll talk. So I read it again, read it again. Okay. Called him. He said, come on back. It was at this meeting at 14 years of age that Professor Clark dropped the history of the Christian church on me in about 45 minutes. And I stood there listening to this man, maybe 53, maybe 54, I'm 14. And that day I walked to the Stargate. I went home. I spoke to my parents. And my parents said, we're going to do this right. We're going to do this, we're going to do this right. My mother took me, bought a suitcase. My daddy took my cassock. You know, the long robes that you wear, the circles, the white. He took it to the cleaners that he worked in, cleaned it, pressed it, folded it, brought it home. We put it in a suitcase. And I went back to the church. They hadn't seen me since I spoke to Professor Clark. They saw me almost every day. The supervising priest said to me, Booker, I think the church is losing. I said, Father, the church is lost. He put the suitcase on the table. They didn't see me since. And here I sit with you now. Born again after.
Yes, sir. Yeah. Did you know as a young man, outside of that, were there signs that were showing you that you were headed into this type of life?
Yes. Yes. The signs were there always.
Okay.
But like all human beings, I picked them up as I went along. Even to this very day, I still am picking up the signs that I saw when I was young. But I just didn't know what they meant. And that's what I tell young people.
Is that unconscious mind?
Yeah, man, that's deep back there. That's your divine purpose. And that is what you're driven. And that's why I tell people, stay true to yourself. Don't let anybody come into your life and convince you to move away from those deeper feelings that you have.
I call them dream killers.
Yes, yes. And you see, the bottom line is that once you're walking in that area and you walk with the ancestors, everything will be all right. You just keep following that path. And don't let anybody come in and change you around. And that is what has led me, as with Professor Clark, to become the curriculum writer and the staff developer that I focus on. It is my parents and Professor Clark that brought me into the educational system after I realized I was not going to become an astronaut. And so my life has been education. My profession has been about educare, to draw out of the human family.
That's the root of the word, education.
Educare, to educe, to draw out. That's why I tell people, don't believe a word I say. I'm not here to make you believe me. I'm only here to make you think, to draw you out of yourself, to view yourself, to come to conclusions about yourself. But don't do it because of me.
Yeah, a lot of us have that misconception that education is supposed to be something.
Yes.
Supposed to draw out.
Absolutely.
It's just the opposite.
Absolutely.
Of what's going on.
Absolutely.
Your love of teaching, we obviously see it by the way you present, the way you speak. What allows you to maintain that love of teaching? Is it the love of the people, an inner spirit that you have?
It's all of it.
It's all of that? Okay. Because that's important for people to understand. To, you know, as we talked about earlier, that steadfastness of purpose you have to have when people try to knock you down, tell you you're on the wrong path, and your family turns against you and different things like that.
Yeah. See, the gift of my family was they didn't always agree with where I was headed, but they just gave me the support to let me know that they were with me. And that's what I try to do with my family. I may not particularly care about your direction. I haven't had that experience, but that should never happen. I just want you to know you have my support. Whatever you do, be the best of it.
I was raised a Christian as well. My grandmother is a Baptist preacher. And she, as I started to get into my African side, starting to learn and to dig, and I would share things with her. Didn't sit too well with her. But the one thing I understood is she was one of the best people I've ever met. So with Christianity, helped make her this great person. She didn't drink, she didn't smoke, she didn't cuss, she wasn't loud, she wasn't what we call a hood rat today. So, you know.
And Christianity, that's why I tell people don't throw Christianity away.
Right.
Because Christianity comes directly out of the Amen priesthood.
Right.
Atanism is based, Judaism is based on Atanism.
Yes.
And Islam is the combination of them both.
All of it comes from Africa, correct?
All of it comes.
Yes, sir.
All of the writings of the Bible.
Yes.
Genesis you can find in the Shabbat stone. The whole manifestation of the movement from the Old Testament to the New Testament is carved on the pyramid text.
Ten Commandments. Ten Commandments.
42 laws of the admonitions of Ma'at.
Yes.
So I say don't throw those writings away.
Right.
Just root them in Africa.
Right. John Henry said once that European took the spirituality out of Christianity, which did harm to us, because we're a spiritual people.
Yes.
You know, when we believe something, we take it to a whole nother level.
Absolutely.
You know?
Absolutely. You know, I mean, you got people that have stadiums now.
Yes. Yes.
You know, that fly.
Mega churches.
That fly from one place to another.
Yeah.
Jesus was so poor, according to the story, he walked the earth with one sandal.
Yes. These guys driving jets or driving Benzes and flying in jets and different things like that. So.
Yes. And he would go out and fast for 40 days and come back, and one of his students would come with a glass of water. And Jesus would see a young boy that was thirsty and say, give him the water. That's the principle. So when Grandma was doing this, her Christianity shaped her African mentality. She just didn't know. But you see, our ancestors didn't have to know because they saw the Africanness in Christianity. African philosophy is not a part of Christianity. Christianity is a part of African philosophy.
Pieces of that peripheral.
That's it.
Of that spirituality.
That's it.
Explain the Maafa, because I think that's very important for our listeners to understand.
Terroristic disaster.
Yes. How has it affected us?
It has affected us in numbers of ways. I mean, it has taken us to a whole level of what you see the gang banging.
Right.
And even amongst us, as people who may not be committing those crimes, we commit a different kind of crime. We ignore those who need our help.
Who need you most.
Yeah, we got this bootstrap concept.
Yes.
I pull myself up, they can pull themselves up. That's not true. And that's not what Jesus Christ was about. See, if we just knew, we'd know that each and every one of us is Jesus Christ.
It says that the Spirit of God is within. Right?
Yes.
The kingdom of heaven is within.
Yes.
That's one of the things I believe from the Bible. I've learned that a lot of it was rewritten, and we have the different versions, the Septuagint version, the Babylonian Talmud, Latin Vulgate version. I've read all of them, and then you see the differences and the changes that they made, but there's still some core principles that are in there that you can take and help make you a better person. So I don't knock anybody for what they do.
Absolutely, and you see that's what the educational system was based on. The educational system, when we're teaching, I call it, well, let's say sacred science. I call it soul science. But fundamentally what you're dealing with is the fact that you have a concept that spirituality is unseen science, and science is seen spirituality. And in the classroom when you're teaching, that is a spiritual experience that is manifesting itself mentally. And when we are in the classroom as educators, and this is what I'm here in Pittsburgh to talk about, this is what I travel and I attempt to talk about in terms of the educational system of our people and our children, to understand that George G.M. James wrote Stolen Legacy.
Yes.
In George G.M. James chapter 8, he talks about the purpose of education. The purpose of life was to save your soul salvation. So you have to have a pedagogy of soul salvation, that you use 7 liberal arts. Those 7 liberal arts give you the concept that upon your transcendence, upon your joining the ancestors, that your soul or your Ba will be liberated from your tomb, which is the body. So the purpose of knowledge and wisdom was to liberate. That's why they were called the liberal arts. Yes. And you see, they had 7 liberal arts. They did not teach in courses. They did not teach geometry. They did not teach astronomy. They did not teach history. But they taught it all because they taught conceptually. And they taught within what we call the 7 liberal arts. The Romans called it the quadrivium and the trivium. They did not have a history book. They did not have an astronomy book. What they had was conceptions of life that they infused this information from this person, from this perspective. So for instance, the quadrivium, there's the 4 and there's the 3. 7 altogether. And so you would have the grammar. You had the dialectic, and you had the rhetoric. That was the trivium. And the quadrivium was geometry. It was astronomy. It was algebra. Okay? And it was music. Yes. But they took those 7 and they infused it in the concept. So you used and learned the grammar of something. You learned the astronomy of something, the cosmos. The geometry was the measurement of the earth. The astronomy was the measurement of the heavens. And the music was the harmony that brought the two together, as above, so below.
So we weren't just stargazers. A lot of people try to, downplay Kamene, role in the world. Moving forward, brother. After studying you for so long, I came across a tape where you spoke about our need of a paradigm shift. Explain that to the people.
Okay. Paradigm outline. Outline of how you do things.
Right.
We are living in a Western paradigm. We are living in a Western outline. Right now, we're living a life, and we're concerned with paying the rent.
Yes.
We don't have a choice.
Card note. Yeah.
You can be as African as you want, but you still gonna worry about paying the rent. If you have children, if you have a spouse, you are concerned about their upkeep to make sure that they have what they need. In an African paradigm, in an African outline, those things you never learned about. Those thoughts never entered your neurons. You never sent a message from one neuron to another that eventually would say, do you have enough money to pay the rent? Are you going to be able to feed your babies? Because that was a given. Even if you were on hard times, your community would help you. You never worried about those things. So you were allowed to think and live on a whole nother level, which allowed you to think great thoughts. You see? So the shift that we have to make, to think that people have to worry about food and clothing, those are fundamental basic rights. The right to education is a right. Student loans are ridiculous. We have children in our communities who may not educe their genius until they're 18. But because of money, they may not ever be able to go to the institution of their dream in order to become the person that will finally find the cure for some of the diseases that we face. Simply because we don't have money. That was unheard of in the ancient world. Everybody's greatness was brought out. But you see, when you're living under white supremacy, there is a group that wants to be on top and don't want the other groups on top, and they are willing to let even their own ignorant ones be on top, killing the people, whether it be in medicine or law or food.
We have a lot of external forces that play a part in our construction, leading to this model. We have, for instance, I was reading a study where they talked about Chicago. We had all these deaths last year, how they were tearing down the projects and moving people into sort of quote-unquote rival areas, where that caused a lot of the death, where a young brother might move from the west to the south, and he's forced to live next to someone who was historically his enemy. So we have external forces with the food, with the phthalates, the putting in the plastic,
Yes.
the bromine, the putting in that. All these things are playing a role in our destruction. But I asked you, as a whole, can you break down who you feel is responsible for the condition of the youth? Because this is what we're here today to talk about.
Yeah.
Who is responsible for that? Is it us, or is it an external forces, or is it both?
I'm an early childhood teacher. I like stories. I'd like to talk about The Exorcist, the movie, The Exorcist. For those that have seen it, you'll get a sense of what I'm talking about. The elder priest, Father Merrin, and the younger priest, Father Demi. There's a scene when they're about to go in to meet the devil for the first time.
Remember that. Yes.
Okay? Now, Father Merrin has dealt with the devil before, so he knows the devil. In fact, it was the exorcist, the heretic that came after that previewed his experience with the devil in the past. That was one with James Earl Jones in.
Yes.
Ethiopia, by the way.
Yes.
And before they go in, Father Merrin looks to the younger priest and said, look, I want you to know something. Before you go in that world, I want you to know something. There is only one devil in that world. But that devil is going to manifest himself in many different ways to you. But just remember, there's only one devil in that world. That's how I answer your question. There's only one devil on this planet, and that devil is ignorance.
Do you believe that devil can corrupt any man? Is there a particular color with that devil?
It is within
Because
all
as you
of us.
know, with my generation, we have this big thing is the white man, the devil.
No, no. Ignorance claims all lies.
Even Henry Harrison, as we spoke of earlier, quote said, "Evil can corrupt any man."
Any man. We have it. That is what makes us human. See, in the Osarian drama, Heru never defeats his Uncle Satan. He puts his Uncle Satan in his place.
Battles him.
Yes,
Never defeats him.
but puts him in his place. In each of us, there is that element of Satan. You've got to put that in its place.
Within your own individual
Within
life.
your- exactly.
Before you deal with anything.
And that is ignorance. Ignorance gives birth to twins. Fear, false evidence appearing real, and denial of that fear. Fear and denial give birth to white supremacy.
Right.
See, our problem isn't white supremacy. Our problem is ignorance. If you want to solve the problem, you got to go to the core. White supremacy is only the grandchild of the real problem.
So this whole fear of genetic annihilation is just one aspect of
Yes.
that catalyst fear. Just because.
They fundamentally understand, they being peoples of depigmented process, not just depigmented complexion,
Yes.
because this is another challenge that we have.
Yes.
We have so many brothers and sisters, righteous in all ways, who are like complexion.
Yes.
What are we saying to them when we talk about it?
Yes.
We're just doing the opposite of what was done the first time.
Yes, sir. Yes.
I do not believe that when you're looking at the human, I believe what Dr. King said is the content of your character that makes you who you are. And I would not want to make an African child, well-pigmented, believe that they are superior simply because of their melanated state. Because I have seen too many well-melanated people acting very inappropriately.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So if melanation made you that great, you wouldn't be acting the way you're acting.
Yes. Yes.
So I know that it's not the melanation that makes you great, but there is a biological concept that goes with it, and that is that plants were meant to be green, humans were meant to be black. And if a plant or a human move away from the sun, it begins to create a relationship or a lack of relationship between the light and heat energy of the sun and that particular living thing. And it will begin to lose its pigmentation in order to be able to get the little bit of sunlight.
Yes. That goes with Sheikh Jove's theory of the monogenetic theory of adaptation.
Yes.
And how we evolved, which created the European man I think it was 40, 50,000 years ago.
Give or take during
Yes.
the second phase of the Warm Ice Age. I just and the evidence of it is right in front of us. Because look at us. We are now in June. We haven't really had, I don't know about Pittsburgh, but New York, we haven't really had hot days yet. I had a couple. But from give or take October until now, we have lost
Yes.
our darkness. Now, when the sun comes out, our carbon atoms are going to join, and we're going to get dark. Now, imagine the human being that isn't going through a seasonal flux. That, in fact, 24/7, there is no sunlight.
Yes.
There were generations of human beings in the northern climate that never, ever, ever saw the sun.
Imagine that. Imagine that.
I did a presentation in a college on melanin, and I made a statement. I said that it got as cold as 1,200 degrees below zero during the Ice Age. There was a professor there that taught geology, and he came to me and said, very interesting presentation. He was of European descent. It's a very interesting presentation. And he said, I can go along with pretty much everything that you said, except this one. He said, it didn't really get as cold as 1,200 degrees.
Okay.
He said, it did. I said, well, please tell me, how cold did it get? He said, it got as cold as 600 degrees below zero. I said, but that's cold.
Very, very
That's
cold.
real cold. So even 600 degrees below
Yes,
zero.
yes.
Imagine living under,
Yes.
we complain when it get a little
Yes,
tick
yes.
or a couple ticks under freezing.
Yes.
30 degrees.
All year round, though. That's the key point.
All year round for thousands of years.
Years. Imagine how that could change your temperament, your
Well,
mood.
you see here in your epidermis, in your skin, you have the epidermis and the dermis.
Yes.
In the epidermis, you have 5 layers: the stratum corneum, stratum luciderm, stratum granulosum, the stratum spinosa, and the stratum basale. In the bottom 2 stratums, spinosa and basale, you have a biochemical known as 7-dehydrocholesterol. In your skin, you have 4 types of vitamin D. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 and 2 are inactive. When the light and heat rays hit your skin, they're pulled down into your lower epidermis. 7-dehydrocholesterol acts on the sunlight. It converts inactive vitamin D1, D2 into vitamin D3, which is, that's what you need in order to create the life systems that allow you to absorb calcium and all the other pieces.
That's why we talk about vitamin D from the sunlight.
Exactly. You see, but in your skin, see, vitamin D doesn't come from the sun. Vitamin D is in your skin. It's the light and heat energy that comes down that converts D1, D2 into D3. That is the vitamin D that you need. In the sunlight, you're drawing it constantly. But as you get into the colder areas, the little bit of sunlight that does come through is blocked by this dark complexion.
Right.
So the body starts to depigment. That's why we depigment in the winter.
Yes. Talk about the importance of teaching this to the youth.
Biology class.
Yes.
In the program that I have on Town Zone TV, we are into the Shabaka stone. We are talking about astronomy. But this past week, and we spoke about skin melanin, neuromelanin, which is melanin in the brain. And we are now going to start to get into the different systems of the body and the role that melanin plays in the different systems. It's important for you to understand the circulatory system. It's important for you to understand the respiratory system. And all of your systems come in pairs. Circulatory system, respiratory system is a pair. Your digestive system and your excretory system is a pair. You see? So even in life, everything comes to you as pairs. And you can teach biology. You can teach astronomy. You can teach chemistry and physics using melanin as what keeps all things together. I did a presentation at the School of Southern Illinois. University of Southern Illinois. I spoke to, before that I spoke to the medical students, because it was the medical school that brought me down. And I decided that I wanted to speak to the medical students, and I said to them, how many of you have been exposed to melanin? There was a couple who said, well, we touched on it. And I told them, for you to study melanin, as you will, for you to study biology or medicine, and not be introduced to melanin, is equivalent to taking an auto mechanics class, and nobody ever tells you to roll the gasoline in the car. You know all the parts of the car.
What makes it run? Without that, you're just a piece of machine.
And what's the purpose of the car? The purpose is to move.
Right.
You can know the ignition.
Take you where you need to go.
You can have the key. You can know every facet of the car. But if you don't know to put gasoline in that car, it ain't gonna go nowhere. So the whole purpose of the car,
Right.
and that's what biology is. If you don't understand melanin, you don't understand your body.
Talk a little bit about the secretion from the pineal gland, how important that is.
Now,
In sleep as well.
well, now you moved into the neuromelanin aspect, and you have moved into, specifically, you moved into the limbic system of the brain. You have the R complex. You have the limbic system. You have the neocortex. The limbic system is responsible for your feelings. In your limbic system, you have another system called the ventricular system, which are like balloons. And in your ventricular system, you have bundles of tissues known as choroid plexus.
Yes.
C-H-O-R-O-I-D-P-L-E-X-U-S. Choroid plexus produces what we call cerebrospinal fluid. You have three major glands in your limbic system, in your ventricular system, and specifically within your third ventricle. Your lateral ventricles are like wings of a bird. Your third ventricle is like the head and body of the bird, and the fourth ventricle is like the tail. Your third ventricle is where these three major glands exist. Your pituitary gland secretes hormones responsible for your physical. You have a pineal gland that's responsible for your spiritual. And you have the optic thalami, which is the eye of your two thalamus. Thalamus is singular, thalami is plural. Your optic thalami is responsible for your emotional growth. In your pineal gland, you secrete at nighttime. In the absence of the sun, you secrete melatonin.
Yes. Yes.
It is responsible for sleep. It is responsible for the aging process. And it is responsible for your reproductive abilities.
Is that why they say good black don't cry?
That's exactly what it is. See, melanin in the skin doesn't make the skin hard. It makes it elastic. And the way you can test it is to put your finger to your skin, any part of your skin. When you take your skin off, there'll be a little indentation. With most black people, that indentation will rise back up. You won't even see it. For people of European descent, when you do that, that might stay all day long. You see, that's how you know the elasticity of the skin. And melanin.
Why they deteriorate a lot faster than we do?
And osteoporosis, bone deformation, particularly amongst women. And because women, of course, the need of calcium in the reproductive world, women are susceptible to that concept. And so they would need it more than anybody else.
Brother, this has been a great opportunity for myself.
I appreciate it.
I honor you. We appreciate you coming. The world appreciates you, brother, because people like you are treasure. We must understand, we must listen and study and pay attention. We have a generation right now that is pretty much in some trouble. You know, our younger generation, with the media and TV and these illusions that we place ourselves under. So it's important that we listen and study from brothers like this, so we can get out of this situation. You know, it's not good enough for just 2 or 3 of us to have this. And I say it all the time. You know, it's not good enough for you to have and sit on a couch and And I'd share, you mentioned George G.M. James and Stolen Legacy. One of the things I got from that book is the 3 instructions for you. You soak up the knowledge by being around a person. You know, you obtain the knowledge, which changes you, then you share it with other people. That third thing, we don't do enough. We don't do enough.
And you know, brother, as I look at our young people, I tend to believe more than anything else that they are essences awaiting order and arrangement. You see, when I see brothers, as I've said frequently, I say it constantly, I love our people unconditionally. Whether you gang banger, pimp, prostitute, whatever your background is, I don't care. It doesn't make a difference to me. I find sometimes we are very judgmental.
Beautiful things.
Too judgmental. Not realizing that had we decided to judge Malcolm in 1942, if the Honorable Elijah Muhammad had not seen potential in this brother, to love him as others that were incarcerated, what would have been of us as a people if someone didn't have faith in Malcolm to know that he could turn this around? That's the faith that I present before my people. I have faith in you that you can do it. And if you don't do it, then I'm disappointed. But that's all part of it.
That goes into your point. You can pay attention to people in 2 different ways, right?
Yes.
Honesty.
Yes.
I live by that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Live by that.
Yeah. See, I'm from the streets. I'm fundamentally a street warrior.
Yes. Yes.
And what has drawn me to communities on this level in my career is Hidden Colors 1 and 2.
Yes.
This was not happening prior.
Yes.
I was going out. I've been doing presentations since 1986.
Yes.
But I did one every 3 months.
Right.
Somebody would call me maybe every, I wouldn't have. Now I'm going out almost every weekend. Almost every weekend. Hidden Colors has been something that has brought to the fore. It has come at a divine time, an appointed time, an anointed time. And now the flower is blossoming. I am seeing more people at the presentations. I'm seeing younger people at the presentations. I'm seeing married couples at presentations.